We were accepting in like white evangelical reformed type spaces, but you know, early on, before that, it was just
running your notch count up, your body count, her coming from being a stud. Were there consequences that then followed you guys in that you had to unpack later?
And so I just will warn people. I mean, the world is going to be the world. I'm going to expect the world to be the world. I'm going to try to reach people in the world. But particularly for the church, I would just warn men in the church.
Ruslan.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a incredible podcast for you guys today with an incredible guest who I've been aware of for a long time. And I've never said this to you privately, but you kind of gave me the start with talking more about my faith on YouTube in the very first conversation we did.
Wow, that's crazy.
Preston Perry, ladies and gentlemen.
What's up with y'all? What's up with y'all, man? That's crazy. That's an honor, bro.
Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, it was. I had an event out in LA, and you came to my hotel room,
Yep. It was Legacy LA.
Yeah.
I think you spoke at it. I rapped at it.
Yeah.
And you were tired.
Yeah.
And you still did the interview.
Yeah.
In your hotel, and that was the first time I kind of dabbled into being more overt with my faith on YouTube.
Oh wow, that's dope.
And that was the first interview that kind of popped for me in the space, in like the Christian YouTube space.
Wow, that's dope.
Before that, it was just kind of like music and marketing and just trying to do like that.
I remember the interview. It was a dope interview.
Yeah, man. So thank you.
Man, no, thank you for having me, bro.
Because that kind of set the trajectory for everything I'm doing now.
That's dope. God is good.
Yeah, and I was like, not even 10,000 subscribers, like maybe 10,000 subscribers.
Wow.
Like that was like early.
I know you way past that now. Where you at now?
375.
Woo.
Yeah, 375. So trying to get to the
Look at God.
to the M. Trying to get to that M, man. Preston Perry.
Thank you, man.
Amazing poet.
Thanks, bro.
Speaker.
Thanks, bro.
Apologist. And soon to be author.
Soon to be author and father and husband.
Excuse me.
You know
and father, amazing husband.
Thank you, brother.
And soon to be author.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm so excited, man. I just finished my book probably literally 2 days ago.
Can you lower your mic just a smidge?
Yeah, Lord.
There we go.
I just finished it like 2 days ago. We straight?
Yeah, you're perfect.
And bro, it was one of the most the best feeling in the world. Like literally, I didn't even know how much tension was in my body. I didn't realize it. But when I handed that manuscript, it was like an hour went past, and I was just like, wow, why do I feel different? And so just trying to get this book finished has been, just oh my gosh, it's been an experience. But
can you give us a tease on what it's about?
Yeah, so the book, so this is actually the first time I'm ever.
Well, thank you. Exclusive,
yeah,
baby.
Exclusive.
I like it.
Nobody knows the title of my book, or but the book is called "How to Tell the Truth." It's the whole title is "How to Tell the Truth: The Story of How God Saved Me to Win Hearts, Not Just Arguments." And so it's in a book about evangelism, apologetics, engaging with the world around you. I feel like the world, especially in the Western world, we need to learn how to do that better. But it's also told through the lens of my story. And so I wanted to write a book that was theological in nature, teaching people how to engage with different worldviews, different faith backgrounds. But I also wanted to write a book that was highly story driven. And so like my poetic side can shine. And so for me, I've always wanted to read a book where you have stories and creative language and beautiful imagery, at the same time learning theology. And so I wanted to try to create that. And so
that's amazing, bro.
Yeah.
I love how it's a felt need.
Yeah.
That you're actually solving a problem that a lot of people are struggling with in terms of sharing their faith, but in a way that wins hearts and not wins arguments.
Yeah.
That's
dope.
beautiful, bro.
Thank you, brother.
Do you know, I have no idea how all of it works, but like timeline, when can people expect it?
So the goal is for the book to be out at the end of August next year.
Okay. Yeah, it's about a year out type situation.
Yep. And so they want to, got to put it into print and do all this stuff, and then promo for the book and all of that. And so I'll start promoing it probably heavy like springtime. And so it'd be like at the end of August going into like fall.
Yeah. That's amazing, man.
Yeah, man.
So I first discovered you through spoken word poetry.
Yeah.
But you have a whole journey and testimony before that I've never really sat with in terms of Southside Chicago.
Yeah.
Growing up in what sounds like not a very evangelical Christian environment.
No.
Tell us a little bit about your background for folks who may not be familiar.
Yeah, so I grew up in a single parent home. You know, my mom raised me and my 3 other siblings, and I wasn't churched at all. I didn't grow up in church. I mean, the only time I would go to church was like Easter and Christmas and stuff like that, like big holidays. And so my mom, man, she did her best to raise me and my brothers and sisters, but the only and she did her best to try to bring us around church culture at times. And so I was familiar with it, but I definitely didn't grow up immersed inside of any particular church or, and the only one that I had, like the only solid like Christian I had in my life was my grandmother. And so, man, I grew up in the streets. I grew up, selling drugs, fighting, sleeping with every woman I felt like it. Got kicked out of 4 high schools. Was arrested countless times.
Jeez.
Growing up like the average dude in the urban community, I guess. And when I was around 16 years old, I heard the gospel for the first time in a house church. My mom took me from Chicago to Atlanta, Georgia, because she was like, "You're not gonna graduate in Chicago." And I heard the gospel for the first time in this house church. I was actually trying to holler at this girl. Her parents was ministers.
Oh, wow.
And he had this little house
church. It's always
church.
A girl, man.
Yeah. And he had this little house church in her living room. And that was the first time I heard that, like, God had beef with my lifestyle. I was 16 years old. And the dude got up and was like, "Yeah, if you think God won't destroy all evil, you don't know the God of love. If God is love, he must destroy all evil." And I was like, whoa. And so I didn't give my life to the Lord at that time, but I think that was the day I became keenly aware of my sin. And so like I would like joke with my homeboys every time we would like break in a car or something. Like, God watching us, we deserve like hell for this, right?
That's a funny thing to joke about.
It is, because like I've learned that it's jokes, it's truth in every joke, right? And so like I was like aware that God was watching me. A couple of years later, when I was 18, a friend of mine got shot, and my mom and my sister was trying to revive him, and I just kind of felt like the Lord was like, I've been trying to get your attention.
This in front of you?
Yeah. Well, he didn't get shot. Well, he got shot down the street. I saw the last bullet he took. I witnessed. I peeped out my window, and by the time I got there, my other friends was there carrying him to his car or whatever. And my mom came out. My mom's a nurse. She's an RN, and so she came out, trying to revive him. And as we was trying to revive him, I felt like the Lord was like, "This is you and your sin.
Holy moly!
This is you. You're dead in your sin."
And this is in Atlanta at this point?
This is in Atlanta.
Wow.
Yeah, up on Wesley Chopper Road. And and then, from there, I was like, okay, I don't know how to become a Christian.
Did your friend make it?
No, he died. This, which is, this is all in my book too.
Yeah.
I wrote this story in my book.
Yeah.
And I give the full detail of this story of how I came to faith in my book.
Yeah.
But he ended up dying on the way to the hospital. And man, I was like, I don't know how to become a Christian, but I know I need to get out of this environment. And I was like, I feel like the Lord, I don't feel like the Lord, I felt like I should go back to Chicago. Looking back, I realized that it was the Lord, like leading me back to Chicago. And I was like, Chicago's a crazy environment, but he particularly wanted me to go back to live with my aunt, who was a minister, who just loved me. So she lived like 20 minutes outside the city. So I wasn't in a crazy environment. I had 3 meals a day. You know what I'm saying? She enrolled me in a vocational college, but then she introduced me to this dude named Gary, who was an ex-gang member growing up, and he took me under his wing, discipled me, taught me how to read the Bible. He was going to a school called Moody. What Legacy used to be at.
Yep.
He was in seminary then, so like he just taught me how to read the Bible. He taught me he the first person that introduced me to apologetics. I mean, he the first person that like took me.
He discipled you.
Discipled me.
Wow.
Yeah, taught me how to evangelize and all of that. And so like through through his life, I gave my life to the Lord.
Wow.
And so he the one that led me to Christ. And so that's kind of how I got here.
You said through his life is how I got led to the Lord. I was reading 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 11 and 12. It says, make it your ambition to lead a quiet life and working with your own hands so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders and so that you will not be dependent on anybody.
That's good.
That one verse, man, is so condensed. Like, make it your ambition, redirecting this idea of ambition to lead a quiet life, minding your own business, working with your own hands so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders.
That's real good.
Right? There's a verse in Peter where he talks about even though the pagans don't like your faith, let your like character be something that they can't speak bad about.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So oftentimes it's the daily life that you encounter, and the truth is important, but it's seeing the truth displayed.
Absolutely, man. And God cares about, that. Like, I love, because we talk about apologetics, but apologetics is, derives from the Greek word apologia, which to make a defense for your faith. But people talk about that word all the time. But in 1 Peter, it says something different. It says, always be prepared to make a defense for anyone who asks you for the reason of the hope that is in you. Then it goes on to say, yet do it with gentleness and respect.
That's good.
Having a good conscience, so when those who revile your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. And so, like, we see that, like, no, like, God cares about the way we live our lives more so, just as much as the things that we speak. Because I think a lot of times we think, oh, we got to speak truth. But if we speak truth and our character is trash, we make the God we talk about look like a liar, right? That's good. And so, like, what Gary did was he just didn't preach at me. He lived before me. Like, he lived out loud. And he gave me an example to follow. I saw how, we would go to the hood and play basketball. And, he would go there, and then afterwards he would ask those cats to pray for him. And I'm like, these are hardened criminals. And we on the south side of Chicago in Washington Park. And you asking these GDs, these BDs, these vice lords to pray with you in a genuine, authentic way. And it just revolutionized the way I looked at ministry and church and the body. And so, Gary being in my life was just so vital for me, and I look back at, in God's sovereignty. It's like, no, that was all God's plan, because I don't think I would be here if it wasn't for Gary. Yeah.
So at this point, you said you went to a vocational school?
Yeah.
So what were you doing in terms of your trade and just like making ends meet?
So my aunt, I didn't know what I wanted to be in life.
Yeah.
Because all through high school, I sold weed and stolen shoes. I was. And I was selling crack for a little while, but I was like, I started seeing people go to jail for a long time. I was like, I'm too small to go to jail. I'm too small to go to prison for, and I'm like, bro, and so when I gave my life to the Lord, around the time I gave my life to the Lord, my aunt was like, you need to find a trade. And so she was like, there's a trade. These are all the trades that you can get, pick one. And I was like, okay, welding. I just picked something.
Okay.
And so I was learning how to be a welder for like 2.5.
Let's go.
Yeah,
That's
2
awesome.
years, and I learned a lot, but I didn't graduate or whatever. I ended up doing poetry. Okay. Shortly after I became a Christian. Yeah. People started affirming my gifts, and then YouTube happened, and so I kind of stepped away from it. Okay. So, yeah.
In terms of your content on YouTube started taking off.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm tracking correctly. Okay. Yeah. That's funny. The chat's laughing because they said you're too small to go to jail.
Oh, yeah, for real. I was like, bro, I never had those big dreams and aspirations of being like a big-time drug dealer. I be hearing my homie Thizzle, St. Louis rapper, Christian rapper, talk about his ex-testimony, about how he moved major weight. And I was like, nah, that was never my testimony. Yeah. I used to sell, I was a petty drug dealer, and I used to sell boosted shoes. Right. But other than that, it's like, nah, I'm too small to go to prison, bro.
So poetry came fairly early in the process, like making a living from your art / ministry was fairly early in your Christian life.
Well, I wouldn't say making a living.
Okay, well, making something.
Making something, because I was getting paid like $80 a show at times. And I'm talking about, this is out of town shows. I was driving from Chicago to Cleveland, Ohio, and I was grateful. You know what I'm saying?
What year was this?
This is around, I started doing poetry around 2008, 2009. Okay. It kind of kicked off when I got connected with a ministry called P4CM, Passion for Christ Movement. And then, I met my wife at their second Lyricist Lounge event. back in I think it was 2010, and that's when me, the poet named Ezekiel, and my wife Jackie, we met at that same night. And what would happen is all the poets that night will perform, the ones that were selected from around the country, and the 3 best poems of the night, quote unquote, will get selected to go on YouTube. And those poems that went on YouTube typically went viral. And so my poem, Ezekiel's poem, and Jackie's poem were selected that night. And so, you know, that's when it blew up. And then we started to get invited, you know, to do events around the country with each other. And that's how we became friends.
Got it.
You know, that's how I became friends with my wife. And so, yeah, early on, like it was clear that the Lord was like, you know, I don't want you to be a welder. I want you to be a communicator of the gospel. But I wasn't making money. I wasn't making a living like that. But you know, God was allowing my gifts to make room for me, for sure.
You know what's trippy about that is how early that was in YouTube.
It was.
That's early. 2008, 2009, 2010. That's still pretty like infancy. You know?
Yeah. And think about that. I tell people now, I see all these content creators, you know, like getting on YouTube or getting on social media just to like blow up. And it was like, no, when we did it, we actually just loved the gospel and loved the art. And we didn't know that YouTube would be, you know, what it is. And, you know, but we just love doing it. Yeah. And so when we hit 30,000 views in a week, we was like, whoa. Yeah. For us, that was like 300,000 views. Sure. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so it was big for us.
That's dope, man. I remember those P4CM days. I remember the big event they would do every year. Yeah. What was it? I can't remember what it was. Rhetoric. Yeah. And all of that was like, man, that was such an interesting time.
It was.
In terms of everything. Like that was an interesting time in terms of Christian hip hop. Yeah. Because Christian hip hop was exploding. That was an interesting time in terms of YouTube. That was an interesting time in terms of Christian spoken word. Yep. Because I had never seen like Christian spoken word. I came from, me and Belief were in the San Diego Slam team, right? So I was on the Slam team. He was just kind of in the scene.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I was traveling doing slam poetry.
Oh, wow.
And competing, you know, battling against like a Rudy Francisco or Ant Black, these guys.
Cold poets,
bro. And I could never beat Rudy Francisco in a slam. I get like within like a third.
He's won so many slams.
Bro, the slams is just kind of a goofy idea in general because someone's judging poetry.
Yeah.
Like you do a poem and they hold up a point.
Yeah.
Hindsight. But what was a trip was seeing y'all was totally different in terms of what poetry was, because poetry, especially back then, was super social justice, storytelling, and love poems. Like it was usually one of those three. Yep. And you guys,
I was in the slam world too.
Yeah, you got the stuff that I saw from you guys, because I didn't see any of your slam stuff, but they were like sermons. Yeah, they were like sermons packaged, you know, between 4 to 8 minute long, and it almost. Yeah, it was. I had never seen anything like that before.
Oh, dope.
I was like, yo, this is different. Like it's poetry, but it has its own spin on it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, them spoken word early days was something else, bro. I tell people all the time, you know, we had a lot of recognition on YouTube, but I don't think the church even knew what to do with us and our talent at all. You know, I think for the most part, it was like, this is the church wants to. You know, we've seen Christian hip hop kind of grow, but we don't really understand this. And I tell people all the time, like we were the ones that the events would invite to give like Trip Lee and Lecrae breathing room when they wanted to like to throw a poet on the stage and let you know. And so we were like that. And it wasn't until, you know, we was like, let's start our own thing. And we started to do our own events and started to, you know, create our own little destiny in some ways. And then that's when it kind of took off.
Was that Poets in Autumn?
Yes.
That was a behemoth.
Yes.
That was huge.
Yeah.
I was like, yo, y'all pulling bigger crowds than the rappers.
Yeah, it was crazy.
What was the peak? Do you remember like the peak size of those events?
I think we started 2015 and 2017 we started to realize, whoa. Yeah. I think because in New York we did 3K in New York, and we was like 3K in New York, and so then we started doing international. And then, you know, Johannesburg, it was like 5,000 people.
Yeah. There's a lot of mainstream rappers that can't pull 3,000 people in New York.
And granted, I mean, you know, a lot of these main, you know, to their credit, a lot of these main Christian rappers, they're just one of them. And I think, you know, for
I was talking about secular rappers can't pull 3,000 people.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
That's no shade on Christian rappers. I'm talking about secular rappers. They can't pull 3,000 people.
That's actually true. That's actually true. But for us, I think what we had working for us, we were a collective. I mean, me, Jackie, Ezekiel, Jeanette, and later on, you know, Joe Solomon and Chris Webb joined us. I think we all had our individual stories, and I think people kind of watched us grow up. And so it wasn't just the poetry, but I think people were connected to the stories. They were connected with how where I came from. They were connected with, you know, Jeanette's journey with her husband. They was connected with me and Jackie's journey together. They was connected with Jackie's individual story of her coming out of homosexuality. And so I think people didn't just follow art, but they followed stories.
That's good.
And so I think, you know, but also too, I think God kind of used us to tell creative stories through poetry, which people related to. And I think it was just super relatable, super encouraging especially for young Christians trying to find their voice in the creative arts. And so a lot of people became poets through it. And so I'm just grateful for that.
Yeah, it was definitely a moment that I was like, man, this is insane.
Yeah.
This is cool. Do you think that because you guys were kind of this bridge between what people would say is like the theologically sound folks, the Calvinist Reformed, and like the rest of the part millennial, but also like the black and brown communities that didn't really fit in like John Piper's church, you know? And so it became this really interesting bridge of these different communities coming together.
I definitely think that, man. Like I think we were accepting in like white evangelical reformed type spaces, but you know, early on before that, it was just a spoken word community, and this was predominantly African American church, black church, but also it was a large group of black Christians and black millennials who didn't really like CHH. You know,
that's interesting.
You know,
that's an interesting observation.
And so they
could you define why? Do you think there's a reason why?
I think a lot of them kind of grew out of it. You know that as you get older, it's like, oh, you don't want to go to a concert and do this,
just jump around.
You know, and so I think, you know, we attracted it was a need for the HBCU students, you know, who were thinkers and who Christians who read James Baldwin and Toni Morrison, you know, and so like I think that it was just a space that needed to be filled of Christians who love Jesus, who love being, you know, African American or even just a person of color in general, but at the same time seeing art that challenged them to think in a different type of way. And so I think that a lot of people, it was either two things. Some people kind of grew out of CHH, and it's just some people just never really rocked with it at all. They'd rather just listen to us and then Kendrick Lamar. You know what I'm saying? And so and I think it just kind of gave room for it because we were talking about homosexuality. We were talking about our testimonies of, you know, soul ties and, you know, lust and racism. And we were talking about a lot of the things that the world was talking about. And the Christian rappers was doing it too, but just I think in a different way. You guys definitely filled a void. And I feel like your audiences have been able to grow up with you. That's been cool to see. For sure.
Like we just came from a marriage conference. Well, excuse me, a live marriage podcast.
It was a dope one too.
But it was to me, it felt like a conference. I was like, this is amazing. You know, shout out to Belief and How Married Are You? Like that was great.
It was good.
So to see the audience evolve, to see the audience grow up. Right? There was no one rapping today or doing poetry.
Right? And so many people was like, I love back in the day, the poetry days, but I'm loving what you do with the podcast. And so like it's really dope to see people who used to rock with me, you know, with the poetry still kind of rocking with me, and I'm not necessarily doing poetry as much anymore. It's just it's a dope feeling.
How did you stumble in the format of apologetics on YouTube? Because that was by far like again, man, it's like getting to know you a bit. It's like you're like this onion, and there's like the outer surface of like, oh yeah, like Preston, the poet, right? And then you peel the layers, and I'm like, this man's on YouTube debating, sharing the gospel, and then praying for people, and they're like getting emotional. And, you know, how did you stumble across that format?
So
it's beautiful.
You know, in my heart, when I am at the core, at the core is an evangelist, and so you know, my wife, she had said some years ago, I think it was back in 2016. She was like, you should start a YouTube channel teaching people what you do, because it's amazing. We'll be on date night and I'll see, you know, a Muslim or see some Muslims out there. And I'm like, oh, we got a couple minutes. Let me talk to them. And so she used to always talk about this ability that I had to just kind of like disarm people, defensiveness out in the streets, and just kind of just being myself, just a, you know, regular cat, and just talking to people. But at the same time, you know, I came from that culture. I came from, you know, real street cats who gave their life to the Lord and who just had a heart for the streets. And so I was kind of groomed in that. And so I wouldn't call myself a street evangelist. I just used to give the gospel wherever I went. And so in order to kind of teach people this side of me, because I had this public ministry of being a poet, a communicator, but Jackie was like, this private ministry that you have when we in Uber rides and you're giving the gospel to the Uber driver that's a Hebrew Israelite. Like, people need to see this. And so I was like, okay, let me start a YouTube channel, going out on the streets when I had the time to just have conversations with cats and chop it up. And, you know, that's kind of how I started. I just wanted to show people how to engage with the world around them, because I think a lot of times in the church, we do a good job of teaching people how to call a spade, and we do a lot of yelling from social media. But in actuality, ain't nobody never really taught us how to play cards. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We just like social media disciple us to talk at people, but the Christian community don't really know how to talk to people in a way that's effective. And so that's the reason why I'm writing the book. That's the reason why I did Bold TV. And I'm gonna start it back soon. The Bold TV channel. It might look a little different, but I'm definitely gonna start having conversations with people again. With the channel.
What out of all the things you've done, which one would you say is the most fulfilling? I mean, you're talking about poetry, being in front of thousands of people. You've preached. You've now written a book. You do a podcast with your wife, right? And this YouTube format where you're sharing the gospel in the streets with people, and it's all expressions of art and evangelism to certain degrees. Which one would you say you've like, man, I really enjoyed this aspect of it?
Wow, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I love the outside church. I mean, not the outside church, the outside world. I love giving the gospel to people who are not just in the four walls of the church. So I do that all the time when I, you know, and I don't force it. I just kind of like when I'm at the barbershop and I see a young dude who look like he's from the streets, I spark a conversation with him. You know what I'm saying? I love that. I think that's the first thing that come to mind is that. But I also love art and I love creating things. And so poetry and exploring the beautiful possibilities of language has always highly intrigued me. And so if I would have to choose one, I think I just got done with my book, but my book is a combination of both. It is theology and art. And so I was able to write creatively. And so I like both. Yeah, it's like my artist side and my theology side is like two sides of the brain, right? And so I love writing this book because it was an opportunity for me to express both at the same time. And so I think I would have to say the book was the hardest thing I've ever did, but at the same time, I think it's going to become one of my most fulfilling things once it's out and I'm able to talk about it. You know, but anything that I can do with my wife, Jackie, is great. I love doing ministry with her. She's my best friend. Our podcast is really fun to do because we're so comfortable with one another. And it's the podcast I think has had the most reach out of anything I've ever done.
That's good.
More than evangelism, more than all of that.
The podcast is interesting because people, that's your living room, right?
Yeah.
So psychologically, maybe I'm not sure if people like feel this consciously, but on a subconscious level, people are in your living room.
Yeah.
And you're in their living room.
Yeah.
So that's a very intimate, it's like when YouTubers shoot stuff in their bedroom and you see their bed. Like that's like, you don't think about how many friends' rooms have you seen. Very few people's bedrooms you've gone into.
Yeah.
So when people see you in your living room with your wife, it's a very, that's some weight to carry.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably one of the things that makes it so intriguing.
Yeah.
If we have to get technical with it, is like there's something to, one, your guys' dynamics. You guys are both very interesting people. Two, your wisdom and your life experience, everything you guys are talking about is phenomenal. And then there's also this layer of like, they feel like they know you.
Yeah, for sure.
You know? And it's very vulnerable.
Yeah. We said a couple of weeks ago, we was like, man, maybe we've been a little bit too vulnerable.
I remember I saw one and it was like, it was something like you confessing porn. Yeah, It was something like that. And I was like, oh man, I don't know if I could listen to this. Like this feels very intimate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
And I clicked into it, but I don't remember the pod, but I just remember like, one, it was just good titling and everything.
Yeah.
But then two, I was like, wow, this is very, very personal.
Yeah. And people, when people hit us up now, they be like, yo, how did y'all become this? And it's just like, I think, you know, one, for people who say that probably wasn't as locked in when me and Jackie's ministry first started. I mean, we met on the same day. Our poems went viral on the same day, that night. And her poem was My Life is a Stud. And my poem was Soul Ties, talking about all the bodies I've had sexually. And her poem was talking about how she came out of homosexuality. And so from the beginning of our ministry, we've always just been transparent people. You know what I'm saying? We don't really care about what people think about us that much. You know, and we have made a decision in our life to be free. Like we're not gonna be bound by nothing. You know what I'm saying? And so like, you know, and it has its challenges. I mean, anytime you share your life publicly like that, it's always gonna be people who feel like they have the opportunity to speak into your life more than they should. And so I think we've kind of just grown a particular type of skin to not let it affect us that much and just to not listen to it. But God has used it, like that pornography episode I had on my podcast. I mean, so many men were set free from pornography, and you know, so many marriages were healed. I mean, I've had brothers come up to me, you know, crying after shows, like, "Yo, thank you for the podcast." And so like it's been a good thing.
I want to get into some of the controversies about that kind of stuff, but my question is, you said you guys both came for you having, you know, running your notch count up, your body count, her coming from being a stud. Were there consequences that then followed you guys in that you had to unpack later?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Because I think sometimes we sell people this like, you're going to get saved and Jesus going to make everything perfect and then you just going to be healed and whole and delivered. And it's like, man, you walking around here with a high body count as a man or a woman, that's going to follow you into your marriage. You walking around here with a porn addiction, that's going to follow you into your marriage. We don't get away often without just, now God can definitely just deliver people, right? And some people definitely, their ability to pair bond could be restored or whatever, right? But the data and the research has shown that like the people most sexually fulfilled in the marriage are like evangelical Christians who have the least amount of partners before getting married, which is crazy to think about, right? And the practical side is because you have nothing to compare it to, right? You got nothing to juxtapose it to, but then it's also, there's just something to living out God's ways. But for people who come from pretty heavy backgrounds, you know, come from porn addiction, which I've dealt with, or come from sexual trauma, which I've dealt with, right? I don't think folks understand that these things do follow if you're not intentional on dealing with them before getting married. Preferably before even dating and courting, right? So can you speak to that a bit as both of you guys coming in and having some pretty heavy testimonies and what's that been like?
Yeah, no, for real, that's a really good question. I mean, you know, one, I just want to say, you know, I hear a lot of times people in the world who feel like Christianity is like bondage because the faith doesn't allow you to live your life. I think they don't understand that God calling us to live in the way he has created us is really just his love and his wisdom, because we were not meant to operate outside of the way he has created us.
That's
right.
And the beautiful part is the world is slowly starting to catch up and acknowledge that.
Yeah, bro.
In terms of the data, I'm not sure if you know what the Whatever podcast is. It's pretty big podcast, dating podcast, like 4 or 5 million subscribers. Michael, sits in the 17. He's like one of these guys in the red pill space.
Okay.
Was just talking about this and then like stopped, shouted me out and said the only people having successful marriages and successful sex lives is evangelical Christians.
Wow.
Hey, shout out to Ruslan. I know he's gonna clip this.
That's
right.
That's what's up.
And so it's like the world and the data is just now catching up and acknowledging that what you're saying is true. That God's ways are good and they're for our best interest.
And that's the reason why I feel like people be capping, or not even just really capping, or either just really misinformed when they say the Christian worldview is harmful, yada yada yada.
Oppressive.
It's like, no, like oppressive. It's like no, like God. Like when you read the scriptures, we see that God loves us, and anytime something that is created operates outside of the way it was created, it's going to it's going to be affected in some ways. And so, and that remains to be true for even Christians like us. I mean, me, who had multiple sex partners, and my wife, who came out of a life of homosexuality. I mean, we had like God doesn't hold our sin over us, but there is a lasting effect that sin can carry.
Yep.
Right. And this is the reason why God tells us to stray away from it. Right.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why sin has jacked everything up. And so, coming into marriage, bro, like, I had to fight, early on, not to think about all the sex partners I had. And this is the reason why God wants us with one wife.
That's right.
Because he don't want you to be thinking about Keisha's lips and Jessica's hips and the way she used to do this and the way she used to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so this is the reason why so many men in the world, they have so many sex partners, not just because they're players, it's because they're broken, right? They need multiple people to kind of confirm who they are, because they don't really know who they are, right? And so we're searching for love and affection in so many different people, because we don't even know what it feels like for one person to kind of like help, not complete us, but to help us come together with us to fulfill the glory of God for our lives. And so for me, man, it was tough. You know what I'm saying? Not only that, even the way I view women, I think, having multiple sex partners in the world, I unknowingly view women not in a super disrespectful way, like people like rappers in the world did, but I also kind of viewed them in a way of them being a way to fulfill something in me and not me really loving them. Like how can a woman serve me in a way that will mask or help wound or attempt to wound this deep insecurity in me?
Yeah.
And so I wrote in a poem one time, I was like, I forget the line, but I said something along the lines of I treated women just like bodies and not something precious to be held. And so God really had to just correct a lot of stuff early on. And not only that, I was married to a woman who came out of the lifestyle, who didn't like men and who saw men abuse women her whole life, right? Which is one of the things that kind of drove her into homosexuality in the first place. And so God was doing something deep in me, changing my heart, changing my mind, but also, transforming me into the image of Christ, so that I can love her in a way that will show her a picture of Christ on earth, right? And so, like, it was difficult. Her being with a man for the first time, it was me, And so we had our challenges, but the thing that really helped us was we were friends.
Yeah. So you guys you had that vulnerability and ability to talk.
Yeah.
Just communicate.
To talk,
be
honest.
Yep. There's a lot of marriages that don't have that.
Yeah, man. And this is the reason why I tell people all the time, like with us, we're really not supposed to be married. Like straight up. Like I'm supposed to be on the south side of Chicago somewhere, still selling weed, probably working at Popeyes, like real loser type. No shade to people who work at the Popeyes. What I'm saying, like I had no direction in life. You know what I'm saying? And my wife, I mean, she is not supposed to be married with like 4 kids and a husband. You know what I'm saying? That's not the bulk of her testimony. Her testimony is that Jesus saved her, but we're not supposed to be here. But what made us survive and what made us grow and what made us grow deeper in love with one another is because we were friends.
Yeah.
That foundation of friendship is key.
Yeah.
And if you have a solid friendship with a person and you guys both love God,
yep.
God can do wonders with that relationship.
That's good. I think about the practical side of family, marriage, children. And I think a lot of men don't understand that after you get married, there are going to be seasons where you go without sex.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And so the most obvious one is when your wife pushes out a human.
Yeah.
From her, I don't think we understand, like, she is pushing, if you've never seen a child be born and you're a single dude, you don't understand what that does. Like, first of all, the miracle of it is nuts.
Yeah, even watching a woman like watching a child or life develop inside of them.
Yes, it's
and
crazy.
The toll it takes on the body and just the mental and the emotions. It's crazy.
And so I always tell guys, y'all gotta like, she's not trying to give you hand jobs and oral after she pushes out a human. Like, you're gonna have to be patient.
Right.
8, 12 weeks, maybe longer.
Yeah.
And no one prepared me for that with my first kid.
Yeah.
No one sat me down. Because people, we started doing this thing where we started sitting down brothers before they got married and just giving them the real about, like, your wedding night. Especially if you were dating.
That's actually really good. I talk about this all the time. That's so good.
If you were dating a virgin or someone that wasn't super promiscuous and you were, or you were looking at porn, we would sit brothers down and be like, look, man, you got to be very delicate. Like, it's probably going to hurt her. It's you know what I mean? And just really trying to brace people for, like, what's about to happen on your wedding night. Because you got this. But no one, so we were doing that as a crew, but no one was sitting each other down and being like, look, man, after your wife pushes out your baby, like, ain't nothing going down for 8 to 10 weeks. You need to be prepared. And I think if more men knew that, they would be more diligent on killing their sin.
Yeah.
They would be more locked into, like, I gotta get this worked out. Because I thought I was just going to get married and just have infinite amounts of sex, and it was all going to get fixed.
This is the reason. But the reason why is I think the culture tells us that. The culture tells us that women are I'll wait for us to get our fix. But also, if you're a real man, a woman should always desire you, right? And so I think this is the reason why, I started a series in my apartment a long time ago called War on Lust, and the married men that came to my War on Lust meetings struggle with porn almost more than the single man. And it's like, why is that? It's because I think the church doesn't do a good job of letting us know that when you get married, your wife is not always going to be available for you. But what does the culture teach us? The culture teaches us that, that if you are a real man, that a woman should always want you.
Yep.
And so this is the reason why we run the porn, right? It's because we can vicariously live through men who are not being rejected.
That's deep.
Right?
Yeah. That's deep. Wow.
And this is the reason why we have to understand that pornography is not just some lust fix, but it is a deep emotional fix, even if you haven't realized it yet.
Right.
It is a deep desire to be wanted and longed for, right? And so the problem with pornography is just a perverted version of intimacy and longing, right? And it's not rooted in, like, it's not real. You know what I'm saying? And so like for me, I had to identify that in myself. It's like the reason why I ran to porn is because I wasn't prepared to deal with rejection. Not only that, like, it's more than just a woman being pregnant or a woman developing, a body, a baby in her body and all of that. It's sometimes you might marry a woman who have went through sexual trauma, and she might be okay for the first 3 years. But it's a real thing called triggers. And something might trigger her one day where she's not going to be as sexually active, Our bodies change, right? And so, like, the church has to do a better job of teaching men that when you get married, you're not going to just come into marriage smashing your wife every day. It's just not realistic. And the Bible even talks about, abstaining from sex for a season, when it's agreed upon by both.
When it's agreed upon.
Like, I wouldn't recommend any woman who, like, I'm just not giving you, what I'm saying? Because the Bible says don't even do it too long unless you give the devil a foothold, right? And so you don't want your husband to start, believing lies about you and how you love him. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like, no, even if we have to, like, we've done that in our marriage. We say, okay, let's not have sex for a season, but we're working towards intimacy in other ways. So when we do come together, it is not a duty for you or payday for me, right? But it's intimacy. And so I think it's healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's this tension of, there's a lot of men in sexless marriages, but then there's a lot of men who don't know how to be sexless and not defined by it.
Yeah.
And the reality of the need for intimacy for both parties.
Yeah.
Right. And genuinely wanting to serve each other.
Yeah.
That's what it should be. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's this interesting tension that we're wrestling with, and people are talking past each other. And the reality is, you can read all the books, you can go to all the conferences. Some of it is just going to take work. It's going to take work. It's going to take you being in community with people that can speak into you, and the consistency of that. And I think you're right. I don't think we properly equip men for the realities of that.
Facts.
What do you make of all of the kind of red pill sensations that we've seen in the last, I'd say, 3-4 years? We've been seeing it. I know you and Ezekiel have been doing a tour talking about some of these issues. You guys did a really good podcast, by the way, that I listened to, and we've been talking about this stuff for a while on the channel, in terms of, it kind of first exploded with the Kevin Samuels, and then you saw the Fresh and Fits, and then now it's the Andrew Tates, and it's like this whole community of folks that are saying some of these half truths, but like with very wrong conclusions and prescriptions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I think a lot of times people grab these half truths and they identify with the truth in it, and then they run with it and don't really realize how far from God's design that a lot of these ideologies are.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when I think about the red pill community, it's hard for me to think about them and not to think about Hebrew Israelism, in the sense that if you go to the African American community and talk to young black boys who just converted to Hebrew Israelism, they did so because the Hebrew Israelites came and they filled a deep longing and a need and a void for African American men. Right? They felt like they wasn't heard. They were wounded by America, and I think the red pill community was able to be successful is because they capitalized off the wounds,
the real wounds.
The real wounds.
Yeah.
So it isn't that the red pill community isn't feeling a need or feeling a void. This is the reason why some people are so defensive when you talk about them. They're feeling a need. They're just not giving true biblical solutions. It's kind of like Tupac. I love Tupac because he highlighted a lot of things, but and then he was misinformed on a lot of things, and he was well articulated on a lot of things, but he never gave solutions, right? And he even said himself, I don't know the way. I'm just trying to point somebody a highlighted issue, and so somebody who do know the way can pick it up and carry it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think with the red pill community, there have been a lot of men who have been wounded by women. There have been a lot of men who have experienced rejection, experienced heartache or whatever. And I think the church has done a poor job of really sitting with these men and who've been divorced. I mean, a lot of times the woman is consoled in some of these spaces, or they feel like the church is curated for women and not men. And so, but I also think that the space can be a little problematic, because I think what their view of headship is wrong. I think a lot of men look at headship and automatically think dominance or control, and that's just not how Jesus came to lead his church. And so I think they've done a really good job of catering to wounded men, but not giving them truth in a way that I think pleases God and allows men and women to really see one another. And so for that reason, I've just seen so many arguments on social media and men miss one another. And one of the things that, hurt me the most is, I'm an apologist. I love to, reaching out to other religions and I'll be following like social media accounts just to see what other religions are talking about. And it was this wave of Hebrew Israelite women and men on YouTube and Instagram talking about how the Christian faith isn't the true faith because of how men and women treat each other, how the women are not submissive to their husbands and yada, yada, yada. And husbands don't respect their wives. And this is the reason why we should walk away from the Christian faith. And I think a lot of the red pill community has crept into the church. And we have to understand that this is a gospel issue. The Bible says that the way the world will know us is by the love that we have for one another. And so I think when you train and when you disciple men to with this egotistical, domineering, almost kind of like hostility for women, you don't teach the world who's watching us that the gospel is the true faith. You just don't. And so I just will warn people. I mean, the world is going to be the world. I'm going to expect the world to be the world. I'm going to try to reach people in the world. But particularly for the church, I would just warn men in the church to make sure they're not attracted to something because it's rubbing your wounds, but not giving you life.
That's good. That's good. What are some aspects or pillars that you hear from the red pill community that you would say, oh, I agree with some of that? Like, I think some of this is actually valid critique, whether it's of the church or whether that's of male-female dynamics.
I think, the thing about catering to the wounds of people, but not like really giving them like true life is, in order for you to do that, you kind of have to like blurt out a lot of stuff that's not necessarily false, but they're just generalizations of. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Hasty generalization fallacy.
Yeah, women do this because of that. It's just like, okay, there are billions of women on the earth.
Yeah.
What woman are you talking about?
Yeah.
Are you talking about all the women that you dealt with?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, who are you surrounded? Like, and so for me, like, even being a thinker, like, I would like, if I was on these shows, I would ask so many questions before I even entertain a conversation.
Yeah.
Who are you surrounding yourself around? What type of women are you attracted to? Why are you attracted to them?
Right.
What, and so I think that, we generalize women and we generalize men in ways that we shouldn't, first of all, because men are way more nuanced and complex individuals than we give credit for. And I think the same goes for women. And so some things that they say are true. Women in America don't know how to be respectful. That's the reason why we need to go overseas. It's like, okay, a lot of women over there are oppressed. They don't have a choice to leave. And this is the reason why the divorce rate is not, you know what I'm saying? So like, it's not even like a lot of the things that's said, I don't think it's given with like deep thought at times, but it's truth in it. I just don't think that it's dissected in a way that it can be to give proper perspective.
Got you.
In a lot of ways. And so, it's some women a lot of women in America are disrespectful. Yeah, the divorce rate is high. Yeah, a lot of women are materialistic. So are men.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so I don't know.
Yeah, I think what I always see it as is hasty generalization,
Yes.
fallacy, and selection bias.
Yes.
You're dealing with a very specific type of woman.
Yeah.
And not all women are like that.
Yeah.
Right. And so I then listen to the women, and then the women are like, I'm the 28, 29, 30-year-old virgin looking to submit to a man. Where are they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I talk to the men, and they're just like, well, these women don't know this. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I got these women over here who are saying that the men are messed up. And then I got the men over here saying the women are messed up. It sounds like y'all are just talking past each other.
You want to know what I think, bro? I think social media has jacked us up. Because I think a lot of the men who are just so irritated by a particular type of woman, they're never talking about the modest woman that they never notice. They're always talking about the woman that Instagram and social media and society kind of puts on the pedestal, right? A lot of these women kind of be out of their league anyways, right? And vice versa. And so like you you generalize all women, and you really kind of wound or even offend a lot of women who are made in the image of God because you went for a particular type of woman that rejected you consistently. When that's just not the overall, heart of women out there.
Right.
And so like yes, there are women out there who are materialistic, who are money hungry, who are gold diggers and all of that. But it's like, no, social media presents a particular type of woman and you're attracted to that. You're like your heart wants what the world has offered, and then when you try to go for it and you don't like it, it's like no, it's so many women that I know personally. They be like, what? But nobody talks to them,
That's
right? Because they ain't on social media showing their body. You know what I mean?
And by the way, not everybody is even on social media.
Right.
There's a lot of women not on social media.
Absolutely. And so like we just make these broad generalizations. It was like, right, like, and so like I think vice versa. I think women, social media, these men get on social media and like, I'm a high class man and I make 6 figures and I'm 6'5" and I got a degree and I work out, and it's just kind of like, okay, and then your standards become high, and then when you want that and your heart is broken because you're not finding it, you're ignoring the God that you can really be building a friendship in your local community because you want. Like social media has trained us all to kind of want this false version of what's real. And so I think that, I'm a big believer that we should get off social media and really go into a local community, local church.
Outside.
Go outside. Treat this like 1995. Put your cell phones away. Have conversations. Really get to know somebody. And stop coming into like social media has trained us to expect something instead of really trying to get to know people.
What would you say to the critique that goes, modern feminism has influenced the church in a negative way? It caters primarily to women. It's ran primarily by women.
Yeah.
And it is not appealing to men.
Yeah.
And this has now influenced the way many women who are Christians in the church see themselves and see what they're looking for.
You want to know what I think, and I could be wrong. This is just what I think. I've kind of did my research on this a little bit, but in the 1990s, even where men were in churches more, the church started to realize that even when men came to churches more, women were the highest consumers of Christian literature, Christian books, everything. And so I think consumerism, I think, plays a big part in how we cater to women more. Women buy, statistically, women will buy a Bible study quick. Statistically, women will go to a worship night quick. And so you want to do conferences at your church. And so women they're just such high consumers of and men, we just want to feel useful, right? We just want to feel needed. And so, but the thing is, when you have churches that only praise men who have communication skills, right? And then you're catering to women because they have a lot of buy-in power. I think men kind of like lose their way in churches, and it's just like, what am I here for? And so I think because of that, I think I think a lot of men have found the church unattractive. But I also think that it just goes to discipleship. Like I think that if we started to disciple men, and encouraging the older men to pour into the younger men, I think that we'll see a lot of more men come into the church.
Yeah. It really should be that simple.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's not. And it's a bummer because I feel like discipleship changed my life, man. Like it really, on every measurable facet in terms of who I became as a husband to who I became as a provider to like all of it, like going in. The reason why I started working on my mental health is because my church had a program called Men's Skills, and it was like a mixture of like group therapy and Bible study and going through like a curriculum about psychology and like understanding feedback loops and triggers and all this. Like that for me started in 2015, 2016 in my local church. Like I would have never gotten a therapist had my church not done that for me.
Wow.
So
dope.
it really is that simple, you
Yeah.
know? And I think that the tricky part is when there are the practical, because I think what you're saying is most of this stuff is more practical, right? Like most of this stuff it's not a conspiracy.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
Yeah.
Right? Like women are greater consumers. They make, I want to say like 80% of the spending decisions in a household is usually made by the woman.
Yeah.
Right. So like that is what it is.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like people having a gripe with capitalism. And I'm like, man, capitalism is what it is. Like wealth is going to travel to the top.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, that disparity of wealth traveling to the top sucks.
Yeah.
But that's always, it is what it is. Like so it's like trying to be mad about almost these natural orders of how things just kind of play out instead of being aligned with the solution for what should be happening.
For sure. And also too, I think that if churches would just become more Bible focused, too, they'll see being real. Men just want to learn the word. Like, you know, like my following. I was like, wait a minute, I'm out here doing these poems, and I'm out here writing these dope vlogs, and you know, I got a decent men following. But when I started to my apologetics YouTube channel, my male following and my women following kind of started to match. I'm like, whoa, this is crazy.
Yeah. Well, YouTube tends to be a more male-centered audience in general. Like, there's just more men on YouTube.
But even my poetry, it was mostly women.
Okay.
So huge woman following.
Huh.
But when I just started to teach theology and teach the word, you know, men don't want to do like devotionals and write in the journals. They want to learn theology. They want to learn. I don't think the church understands how much we have adopted the world's ways. You know, that's what politicians do with one another. Yeah, is such and such really conservative?
Right.
They were seen with such and such on July 2nd, 1992.
Yeah, they've coined that the death purity spiral. Something isn't perfect, it can't be good.
Yeah. And then the last thing they say is a like a pitch for them, vote for such and such, not them. And it's kind of like, and so we've done it, you know what I'm saying? Like we've been in pictures with people, especially with people with, you know, names or whatever. And they might not have the same political views, and so people literally made all our views theirs. They seen us in a picture. Yeah. And it's kind of like, bruh, like.
To be fair though, I've avoided going to events because I might end up in a picture with somebody.
But why? Why though?
Because I don't need no pictures of me and Candace Owens floating around right now.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like I've intentionally done that because like until I can sit down with her and we can have a real conversation. Yeah. I'm not gonna be caught up in a photo with her or Brandon Tatum or like some of the like the black conservative space.
Yeah.
I'm cool. You know?
Yeah. But my thing is, it's like, I think it's problematic that we make people things of, you know, or make people like give people positions based on who we see them in the pictures with.
Yes.
Like it's just like, come on, like we have to do a better job.
We struggle. It's all or nothing thinking. We struggle with that.
And it's kind of like, come on, guys, think a little deeper than that. You know what I'm saying? Because like I remember when not even to get off the whole politics thing, but even Jackie, my wife Jackie, she was seeing, she was at some conference. I forget what it was. With like, I think it was like Bethel or Hillsong or I forget one of them, and the Reform Circle just went in.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you're not one of us. And it's like it's like this deep tribalism.
Oh yeah.
Culture that we live in. She was at a conference, right? And she took a picture with them. Yeah. And it was so many people on YouTube who basically started to say that she was a false teacher because she's seen Jackie Hill Perry associates with false teachers. Jackie Hill Perry is seen with, you know, this being her friend. And it's just like, you know what they didn't ask? What did Jackie Hill Perry teach when she was at this conference?
Yeah, that's good. That's you know
because listen, because it's not about the gospel. We try to act like it's about the gospel, but we act like politician Christians more than real Christians.
That's good.
We try to act like it's really about the gospel.
Yes.
Nobody cared about I saw not one comment. I saw not one YouTuber asking, what did she teach?
Yep.
Did her message change?
Yes.
No, nobody cared about that.
Right.
They just cared about who she was in a picture with.
That's right.
It's like, is this 7th grade or is this the body of Christ? And it just shows you how much we have been conditioned by the world, and we just put the Bible stamp on it, and we think that we're being faithful Christians. It's like, no, you're actually being Pharisees who don't ask questions.
That's right. Check this out. Same exact thing. Ruslan defends associating with Joel Osteen, Bill Johnson. Bill Johnson's Bethel. So the same exact thing happened to me, and there's a whole article about because I did an event, a virtual event, mind you, a 31-day wisdom challenge, and every day they'd have somebody else on that they were interviewing. Yeah. And so they had me on a day, and like a week before they had Joel Osteen on. And so the packaging was literally Ruslan partners with Joel Osteen.
Oh my God!
Like Joel Osteen has no idea who Ruslan is. Bro.
Yeah, and it's so, and you know what? I think it's lazy thinking.
Yes,
and I also think it's just slander.
Right.
It's just people do not care about it. It's lovely. Like it's a very loveless thing. You have quote unquote Christians out there who don't love people well, and it's very obvious on how loosely you can make a whole YouTube video just because you've seen somebody in a picture with somebody.
Well, and to your point, what was the message? Because a lot of them folks that were there for Bethel or whoever, right, probably needed to hear from Jackie. The folks that were there for Bill Johnson and Joel Osteen needed my talk and my perspective on Proverbs and wisdom and speaking against some of the stuff they talk about.
And these people, the same people who say this about you, say this about Jack, say this about me, they don't know a lot of them, I won't say all of them, but a lot of them don't know the half about what it means to be evangelistic.
Yeah.
They don't like, they can never go into spaces because their idea of being a faithful Christian is calling out non-faithful Christians.
That's right.
And it's like when you center a ministry around calling people out.
Yep.
It's like, how much of a ministry do you really have?
Yeah.
A lot of these pages I'll never see present the gospel.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you've done a good job of telling people what you think the gospel isn't, who's not. But it's like, when are you going to make a proclamation of the gospel?
100%.
It's just like, come on, man. I'm a big fan. This is the reason why I started Bold TV, talking to people. I'm a big fan of, I never treat people, when I meet a Jehovah's Witness, I never treat the Jehovah's Witness like they're a part of this group and I'm looking at through the lens of Jehovah's Witness. I see them as a person first. But their own individual story. I never assume that they believe what the last Jehovah's Witnesses believe. Yeah. And so when I meet a white person, I do the same thing. Yeah. When I meet a black person, I do the same thing. I think Jesus came and modeled that, no, I care about individuals.
Yep.
I don't lump people in with a group of people, even if they came from that group of people, right? And so I just think that we have to do a better job of listening to people and hearing stories, and we will learn a lot more. Yeah. And we will talk a lot less.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Man, I think hopefully this will be helpful. We'll see how people react to this conversation.
You're always going to get people who
I think it would be helpful.
And one thing I realized, and I think God kind of told me a couple years ago, it's going to be people in the comment section. And I'm not afraid to say this. It's probably going to be people in the comment section who disagree, and some people legitimately disagree. But some people who are going to disagree in this comment section are fake mad. They're not, like, a lot of times we get moved and rattled by the majority of the people, but it's just like it's a person who's going to watch this, and you're really just bored in your room, and you just want to make a negative comment to entertain yourself. You're not really mad, not really moved. It's just Tuesday, and you have nothing. You have nothing to do.
Yeah, it's selective outrage.
It's a selective outrage, and so for me, I'm gonna do ministry. I'm gonna try to be a thought leader the best I can in that, because I'm a fallen human being. I'm gonna make mistakes, but I'm never gonna, like, as long as I feel like I'm true to the Lord, true to my family, true to myself, and I try to stick to scripture, I'm never gonna, like, kick myself when I see people mad on the internet, because a lot of it is selective outrage. A lot of it is people not really mad for real, and some people are really mad for real. You know what I'm saying? You have to pray about that. You have to pray that God keeps you away from error. Admit and be humble when you're wrong. But at the end of the day, we're human beings having a conversation, and so I wouldn't sweat it.
All right, guys, we're gonna go over to our Patreon exclusive. I got a couple more questions for Preston Perry, specifically when Roe v. Wade got overturned and some of the backlash that he caught or didn't catch. I want to talk about that. So Hey, if you want to see the extended version of this podcast, completely unedited, consider partnering with us in our online community for as little as $5 a month. In exchange, you get access to these podcasts as we stream them live before anyone else gets to see them. You get access to the replay of our daily after party streams, access to our private Discord server, access to discount codes, and so much more. So help us continue contextualizing the gospel through media, podcasting, and YouTube, and partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Also, be sure to follow us on the Spotify podcast app, on Facebook, and on Instagram. We're constantly posting content there that I think you'll find extremely valuable. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.